this meeting to order for the City of Commission.
And call to order.
On April 16th. Sorry, I was going to say the date, but I couldn't find it. Go ahead.
And call to order the McCracken Fiscal Court meeting.
All right, if we can call roll for the City Commission, please.
Commissioner Abraham?
Present.
Commissioner McElroy?
Here.
Commissioner Watkins?
Present.
Commissioner Wilson?
Here.
Mayor Harless?
Present and here.
I was trying to spice
I'm gonna
that
start
up.
saying here, and then y'all switch.
And Madam Clerk.
Here. 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 Here.
All right, if you all join us for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you all. You may be seated. And Commissioner Bartleman, do you want to lead us in the invocation tonight?
Sure. Let us pray. Father, we thank you for the blessings of this day. We thank you for the opportunity we have to gather together to do the people's business, Father. We just pray you be with us as we make decisions, as we have discussion, and as we look to the future of this community, Father. We're just so thankful that you've blessed this community with so many assets, so many fine workers in the city and the county, law enforcement, first responders. We're so thankful for them and for their dedication to keeping this community safe. Again, we ask you to be with us day by day. It's in Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Amen.
Amen. Well, thank you all for being here tonight, and thank you to the City Commission and the Fiscal Court. This is starting to get very comfortable being up here together on our third meeting. Tonight we are specifically talking about the future of Parks and Recreation in the city and the county, and then we're also going to wrap up with a conversation about future city-county meeting dates and how we might want that to look going forward. And I think the judge would like to get us started.
Well, I just wanted to address that last week the News Channel 6 led into a broadcast with a introduction that with the sportsplex out by the McCracken County High School in the background, and saying that plans were moving forward to have a multi-million-dollar recreation center, swimming, indoor baseball, indoor softball, with the sportsplex all in the background there. There is no swimming pool in the sportsplex. It'd be difficult to swim in there. Because of that, there's no indoor softball or baseball fields. And so I think it maybe misled some people into thinking, one, that the county was poised, or local government, whatever, was poised to actually purchase it, and that it would have swimming and indoor baseball, which is impossible there. And so I just wanted to address that. The county has looked at the property. We've met with a realtor. We've had conversations back and forth about it. We're also looking at many other properties as potential sites. We have differing views on whether the sportsplex would be in our future. Could be, could not be, but it's not moving on forward with it. It's a matter of assessing it along with other properties and doing our diligence, I think, and trying to determine where can we get the best bang for the buck. Is that the location we want this thing? Do we want it somewhere else? And all those considerations. So I think it's really necessary to address that, because there's been a lot of talk that people are surprised. I think within a few seconds of that being aired, in fact, I got a message from a prominent local official saying, "What is this? Are y'all buying the sportsplex?" Not know what. So
If your line wasn't busy from getting a call from somebody else, you got a call from me. I thought I missed a meeting somewhere.
So anyway.
Oh, thank you for setting that straight. I appreciate that. And to that note, tonight the goal is, and we're going to call Mark Thompson up in just a moment to give us kind of a highlight on where we are with our Parks Master Planning process. And you all received a presentation that was an update of where we are in that process. And we have it to pull up if we need to along the way tonight. But tonight really is just for the public's sake, and also for all of our sake, really about kind of just brainstorming and talking about what we want to see happen, what we think is important, where we think that things should be, so that we can get a little bit more serious in maybe putting together a working group or whatever that may look like, so that we together, the Fiscal Court and the City Commission, will be able to pull this off together. I don't know that we need to spend a lot of time on why we need these things. I think our community is ready to say, how are we going to get these things? So I want to make sure we're not starting another one of those false starts that our community has had, but that we will see a way forward to actually get some of the stuff done that our community wants to see. Is that all fair enough with everyone? Mm-hmm. Okay. So Mark, if you don't mind coming up and giving us just a little bit of an overview about what you sent us, I think.
Certainly.
Thank you very much.
Mayor, Judge, all the commissioners, welcome to this side of the house. First of all, the positive of the Parks and Recreation Master Plan program is that people, and we've already found out, we knew this, but it just reiterated that people love parks in our area, number one. What we have first is the surveys that have been filled out. These are not the statistically valid surveys, but everybody has had an opportunity to fill these out. And to date, we've had over 1,400. So you still can't ignore 1,400 survey results. We've actually had one public meeting at the Civic Center where we had nearly 180 participants. We actually had more people in the room, but 180 participated. We did 100 at the Easter egg dash last week that we had participate, and 50 of those filled out the survey and did the money deal. So 96% of the respondents of these 1,400 visit the parks. And 49% of those visit at least 20 times a year. So that's pretty significant numbers. People love our parks, and there are some, they rated conditions 51% good, 28% fair, 14% excellent, and 7% poor, as we went through that. Preliminary results. Now, we divided the survey up into two things. One, we asked if you had a recreation center, which recreation center for this discussion means a community recreation building with an aquatics facility or some sort of thing like that with meeting rooms, fitness, and equipment. The recreation center, the top four things they would want to see in a recreation center was a walking track, gyms, family activity pool, and lap pool. Those are the top four things that they would have wanted to see. Preliminary results on upgrading to existing parks were new and improved restrooms. Restrooms are always the first thing you get.
Thank you. They are.
Continued improvement on the walking trails, security cameras and lighting, and drinking fountains were the top four improvements that they wanted to see. Now, facilities to develop and expand: indoor swimming pool, walking and hiking trails, soccer fields, and baseball and softball diamonds. Duh. We've kind of known that, and it's just the one thing that's the breakdown is money, has been for years. And so that's where we are. And then preliminary results on programs that they want to see continued upgraded: our summer concert series, youth sports programs, adult fitness and wellness programs, and youth fitness and wellness programs. Then finally, the reasons for, there are some people who don't use parks, and the 35% of the people, which isn't everybody, all of those 1,400, it's not 35% of that, but just the ones who don't use it: poor conditions, don't know what's offered, facility programs or programs not offered, and then lack of programs, lack of quality programs. And there's safety and security concerns, which are right there at the same level. So that's kind of where we are to get started.
Great, thank you. I'm going to go back to the slide that talks about the survey you guys did. And I wanted to point out that 46% of the respondents were in the city of Paducah.
Correct.
And 41% in McCracken County. So I thought that was really
And then
great that we had
people who own Paducah but don't live here, 13%.
That's good.
And that's okay. The statistically valid survey, they are wrapping up putting that all together now, and we are pretty well over that 600 number from what I've been told as far as the statistically valid survey.
That's great.
Why is one statistically valid, the other, I assume, is not?
Well, we actually went through a company to do that as a statistically valid. They pick out.
They basically match your demographics of
Match your
community,
demographics.
and they target respondents based on those demographics so that you're getting a good sample size of your entire community, whereas the surveys that you get at events, those are they can be a little biased because people are choosing to be a part of that, so they're a little skewed. The people who get them in the mail aren't necessarily participating in those events and therefore answering in a different manner.
You could fill out more than one.
That's what
Yes,
And you could have filled
that.
out more than one, which is that what you did, Commissioner?
I have not. But in theory, 400 of the 1,400
Could have been the
could
same
be
person.
the same person.
Right.
Correct, and that's not, and so from the statistically valid, and the commission, even though we've got to bring that change order back, we had discussed, at least administratively, that we wanted to include the county, so we had a real true number. So there's going to be a little bit of a bump in our cost of this program, but our numbers will be in percentage-wise that 400 to 200 range, because I think we did, trying to think, 4,000 to the city residents, and you remember, Pam? And then maybe 2,000 to county residents, somewhere in that range. That one's not to be quoted, but that's close. So we did it in that type of range.
Great. Well, thank you so much. You're going to sit on the front row, right? Okay. So we can call Mark back up if we want to and ask him questions as we get into the conversation. So I'm going to ask, does anybody want to get us started? It's your time.
Good. I just think it's really exciting that we are here at this point. I think our city is ready for this, whether you're thinking about your own children or grandchildren, or you're thinking about the economics of the city, bringing people in to spend money, bringing people in to see what we've got here is really impressive. And I think that it's time we're going to have to spend some money to reap some good benefits for all of us. And I just want to see us move forward, and I'm excited. I'd kind of like to know, Mark, how you see. I know we have a study going on right now. We have paid consultants. If you could just do an overview for us what that is going to do and what the timeline is, and make that timeline as quick as you can.
Certainly. We were talking about 10 months
Okay.
on the
Where are
timeline,
we on the-
basically. We are in basically month 4.
Okay.
And we've had 2 steering committee meetings.
Mm-hmm.
The next steering committee meeting is going to be one of the big ones, because they're also going to bring the statistically valid survey.
Mm-hmm.
It's going to come to the steering committee. And then the results of a lot of those things that we've had, because not only have they done surveys, but several people also met with the consultants one-on-one, and I think we had over 18 hours of that on 3 days last month, where they sat in our office. I was not in there. None of the Parks and Recreation staff were in there, meeting with those consultants and giving them their input on what was needed as well. So we're moving right along with it.
At the end of 10 months, where will we be?
You will have not only will it be the recommended, it will have something that you have accepted as the park master plan for the next 10 to 15 years.
Well, as has been said, we all are in agreement. I think this is probably highest priority number 1. Security and safety is first, of course, Judge, for all 3 levels of government, but job creation right after that. And this ties right in with that. I think we're all in agreement that we've got to move forward with this, and we're behind in getting it started. But just as I've used before, an example to show you the difference a first-class recreational complex can have in the area of job creation. I always cite Elizabethtown, although we could do also Owensboro, Hopkinsville, and other communities of comparable, or used to be comparable size, but Elizabethtown always stands out to me. In 2015, they were #1 in the United States and the entire nation in new business startups per capita, with 173 new businesses opening in 1 year. We opened 1 in the city of Paducah. And the difference, they're landlocked. They don't have anything over us, really. But a $21 million first-class recreational complex. I'm sure probably most of y'all have toured it. It's a nice facility, a beautiful facility. I'd love to move that to Paducah, McCracken County. But we can do something along that line. May not be the same price tag, but I know the community wants it, and we all see the need, and it's not just a multi-million-dollar sports tourism industry. It's also quality of life and job creation. So I think that's the major part. We've got interstate, we've got everything. We've got a 4-year university presence now complete. What we don't have is a first-class recreational complex. So I'm glad tonight's here. I'm glad we're working together. I think it's important that we do, and I look forward to whatever we do. I think it'll be really exciting for our community.
When you mention Elizabethtown, though, you do have to mention how it was funded.
That's true.
We do not have that option.
Yeah, and we need that. The General Assembly is going to have to do that. I think the local option sales tax has more political support in doing that. I supported it as a state representative, and there is support up there. They just have yet to pass it. I keep waiting and hoping they will. And then Elizabethtown uses a restaurant tax. That may be a little bit more of a challenge for the General Assembly, but you know, we'll stay on them, and hopefully at some point they will, so we can have a mechanism for funding it.
And just to be clear for the public, the reason why Paducah cannot raise a restaurant tax or impose a restaurant tax is because the General Assembly, the state legislature, has not updated, I guess this is fair to say, Commissioner, I want to call you Representative Watkins, Commissioner Watkins, there is a statute that changed our class city. It took away all the classes, and unfortunately, the ability to impose a restaurant tax is kept along with those classes that they designated, and we just are not able to do that. So several sessions in a row, there have been a lot of leaders in other cities as well trying to get the legislature to at least give the option to local communities. It doesn't mean that you would actually pass one. It just means we'd have the option locally to do that. So I just wanted to make sure it was clear. Commissioner Abraham.
I believe there are 31 cities in the state of Kentucky that do not have the same ability as all of the other cities in the state.
But if you go to Mayfield, you will pay restaurant tax on your hamburger. Just making a point. Eddyville, you will also.
It's a good, fair way to raise revenue. I think 60% of meals in McCracken County are eaten out, and on any given day, and Monday through Friday, with a population of 25,000 residents, or the police chief says there's over 103,000 people in Paducah city limits. Not counting McCracken County, so it'd be a whole lot more than that. Add the county on any given day during the day hours. So there's a lot of people from out of town that visit Paducah on a daily basis, and they eat out, and so you know that would be probably a fair way to raise some revenue, and a lot of revenue for Paducah if we could have had the ability to do it in McCracken County.
Commissioner Abraham.
Kids sports, $15 billion industry. We're missing out on that. There's a lot of smart people up here. We can figure this out by getting the input from our citizens, obviously, finding out what they want. But one thing that we know is talked about all the time of where we're located. And I would gather that a lot of those folks that met with the consultants are parents or grandparents with kids that they get on I-24 and they take off on the weekend going someplace else because we really don't have the facilities to get these tournaments. We had when I worked at the Sportsplex, we'd have like a volleyball tournament. It's like 60 teams, comes from all over, and it's within an hour and a half, 2-hour drive just because of where we're located. And so, you know, this is something that a lot of us have talked about a long time. And when I left the house, I had this big smile on my face, and Cindy's like, "Why are you smiling?" It's because we're talking about recreational sports. We're doing that. We haven't really had this type of conversation has gotten to
Especially
this level.
jointly. Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm confident in the commission and the fiscal court to get the information, get the data, get a solid plan, and get moving some dirt possibly.
Agreed.
Mark?
Yes.
So I went to the one meeting at the Cherry Center.
Yes.
Where the 175 showed up, and I know because I got some emails that soccer moms and dads were prompting each other to get there.
Sure.
And I'm pretty confident that swimming parents were prompting each other to get there.
Yes.
My concern is that at that point, when we had that meeting, I don't know that there was really a public concern that the sportsplex would not be the sportsplex. And so we didn't have the panic would be perhaps too strong of a word. We didn't have the concern of volleyball parents at that meeting because probably in their minds they had a good place to play volleyball for their kids. Are you in any way concerned that the volleyball presence might not be in the surveys because they've just had the comfort that the sportsplex will continue to be the sportsplex?
I don't know about that. It's in particular, they may not have gotten spurred, but I'm sure that their interest level is extremely high as well, because I mean, I know that the schools locally have had some tremendous volleyball teams. There is a private volleyball club out off Cairo Road that we actually helped when the flood came because they got flooded. And they came over and used the rec center, our rec center. So, I mean, there are people out there, and I don't know who or why may not have gotten there, but I think there's significant interest on there. I think the multipurpose courts cover that as well. The basketball courts will cover volleyball. So,
and you also have
be
the youth and adult volleyball on your stakeholder group.
Yes.
Representing some when they're having meetings and bringing
so
back
they have had their input.
The sportsplex has, I guess, the ability to play 6 volleyball games at a time. Does any other facility have that capability in our region that exists already?
None that I know of. You will be able to go down to Hopkinsville, I think, and do that.
The one they just opened?
Probably. I haven't been in theirs, but I would imagine that you'll have that capability. Well, the other place, excuse me, there would be a place here in town that could do it for a tournament, and that's the convention center. Oh. They have the size. They don't have a floor. I mean, you have to get floor, you have to get nets, you have to get the equipment. You need something to sit the folks in. So, but that size facility is still available here locally.
Do they have the weekends available to host the tournaments, though?
They would have some. Somewhere down the line. We happen to have the convention center manager sitting in the front row.
Yes.
For those of you who don't see that.
But they have a large facility that can accommodate much of that as well.
Have we looked at any type of surveys or studies, or there's got to be negative impact on some of the places like Energy Fitness, out there, I see Wes sitting out there. I mean, these guys have got money invested.
Sure.
And, you know, we want to take tax dollars and turn around and go in business against them. So what are the negative impacts?
Those are all discussed, and in fact, we've met with folks in Effingham. They fought the same issues. They actually incorporated some of their facilities together into their rec center and worked out deals where they were instructing and came in. Not everybody would be able to do that, but there were some other things like that. It's going to be one of those types of things. It depends on what you put in there. You can build this without putting a revenue stream of a gymnasium in it, fitness center. There are some of those things that you can do, but it also negates members who might join.
That was the next question. as far as
Not everything has to go into a building like
as
this.
far as a list of what you've got, have you looked at revenue generating? Like, what would swim facility revenue, what would generate off that, or baseball, softball, soccer? Each one of those, which ones?
Our surveys and the master plan process will also help with us on what our maintenance costs will be, how much we would be able to generate and do some of that. All of those will be in the master plan process. Not all of them, most of them. We'll have.
They can hold you to that.
We'll try, yes.
I think that's a great point, though, Commissioner Parker, because, you know, one of my concerns and things I want to make sure that we're thinking about here is that we learn from some of the lessons of the facilities that have already been built and designed. So we bring up Elizabethtown, which is a great example. We already talked about how it was funded from the construction perspective. From what I understand, the city is subsidizing the operation of Elizabethtown sports facility as well. I've heard lots of numbers. I'm not going to quote any because I don't know them, but they sound big. And so for us to then have to turn back inward to our general funds and operate these things, I don't know if that's the best idea for us in the situation that we're in with the pension. So I think we have to get creative with this, and I think the business model part of this is so crucial that we spend time building the business model. There are people probably in our community, frankly, that know this more than any of us up here that can help us put those kinds of things together. And I think also Branstetter and Carroll, who's helping with the master plan, they do these all over the country. So they have good access to data that we can use. And I think that business plan piece is something that we need to land on sooner than later. And speaking of that, one of the things that we have done, and there's some members in the audience, I'm gonna just talk about Friends of the Parks for a second. We have started, hopefully, actually Commissioner Jones has been a part of those meetings as well, and Commissioner McElroy, along with Melanie Patel and Amanda Esper, started the Friends of the Park organization. It's brand new. I think you already had your first donation or two, I heard. So the idea is that we're not using all taxpayer dollars, but that we're using the generosity of our community as well. I mean, we've raised money in our community for arts organizations, for performing arts. We've raised money for a lot of things. And I'm pretty certain we have a whole community of generous people who want to see this thing happen. So I think that's going to be a really great kind of operational support if we can raise an endowment fund. I think $5 million is the conversation we're having about being the first goal. Oh, we're going bigger than that? I see a no. 10 is a great number, and then what you do is you pull interest off of those endowment funds to help with the operation. So I think we have to get creative this time around. I don't think we can all look into local government to fund these things fully.
I just know with Elizabethtown, it's beautiful. It really is, but it's a big drain on their local government.
Yep.
You know, we hear all the time about public-private partnerships. So if there's, you know, you talk about the generosity of our folks, there may be some interest from a public-private partnership perspective in some way, too.
Mark, I know we all try to listen to the needs and the pulse of the community, and whatever we do, certainly I think we've all heard that we need additional and improved soccer, baseball, and softball fields. That's going to take acreage. Do we know how much acreage we'd need? Do we know how many fields would be adequate for what we're trying to accomplish? Do we have land between the city and county that we own already that we could look at that would meet the requirements of what we're trying to do that's available? Or do we have a list? I remember years ago we made a list of everything that met our requirements, and we went and looked at all. I walked all of them. I think there were 6 of them at the time, but I think we need probably to see how much acreage we need, how many fields we need, how much acreage do we need, and what's available, what do we own already, and what else is out there.
I think Commissioner Abraham was on that tour as well. I think I took each one of you on that tour of sites and everything when we were looking at properties and that sort of thing as well. We still have that, and several of those properties are still available. We've also looked at things that are at the Information Age Park, or whatever it's called now. Commerce Park, excuse me, Commerce Park. And there's properties out there as well. So some of those properties are still vacant, probably for sale. So, I mean, as we go out and look through some of those types of things, just depends on what we land on as far as the number of baseball, softball fields we need. It depends on what we land on as far as the number of soccer fields we would need, full-size soccer fields. Between the two of us, and counting those properties that are already currently owned by a government or a quasi-government agency, there's property.
Will the study evaluate all of this and make some recommendations?
It's going to evaluate, yeah. It's gonna be doing so. Yes.
So
They'll come up with some recommendations along those lines.
the number of baseball fields, were you kind of about to answer?
Well, when you typically have some sort of tournament, you usually have 4 field wheels. You would need probably at least 2 of those to get things going, either on a softball or a baseball level.
And I know there's been some discussion of Stuart Nelson.
And that's one of those sites. There's 55 acres, probably 40 of those that are available. We're also in some other discussions on properties close to that. So.
That's moving a dog park, I guess. You can put that on the landfill.
Well, there are other places. That's part of what we're doing with the whole park master plan as we come up with these design thoughts. That you may have stirred up the world right now. I hope you know.
Well, I don't mean that the dogs need to be in a landfill.
No.
I'm just telling you that area is well suited for 4-legged animals.
There are several places that things could be well taken care of.
Well, that would be the current soccer field right now.
Right. I mean, surely if our kids,
But you can't grow
pets.
trees on it, and people want trees.
Mark, can I address baseball just a second? I'm heading to a ball game with you. It's okay.
We don't have room for public comment tonight. I'm so sorry.
That's all right, okay.
So we didn't make that. Can we do that at the end? Add it to the agenda? I don't think we can, sir. I'm so sorry. We have to stick with our agenda.
Yeah.
Nick, we'll have plenty more. Hopefully you'll be able to come and talk.
We can do that now.
Flip it to me, and I'll bring it along.
He's got some good information.
Yeah, he does.
I don't think we can break the quorum. I'm sorry. I just am trying to be thoughtful about the special meeting and the law.
I've got a question and a comment. What's pickleball?
Pickleball is for you and me, Bill. It's the way it started, but it is growing. It is one of the fastest growing sports in the country right now. And it is a takeoff of a combination between paddle ball. It's a paddle ball. It's kind of like a halfway between ping pong and tennis.
Okay.
And you use a smaller court, and you don't have to move as far or as fast because the ball does not go as fast. And it's a more of a plastic ball, and it's a harder type of. It started with wooden paddles, and you're just out there, and you're outside, and you're doing it on your feet instead of just.
I just never had heard of pickleball.
But it is one of the fastest. It, along with lacrosse, are the 2 fastest growing sports in this country.
Yeah. Okay. I'd like to make a comment too, if I could.
But it's in fact, there's several churches around here who have pickleball going on in their gymnasiums now. It's just one of those big things that people want. It's coming. It started down in the Arizonas and the Floridas, and then it has moved up.
No travel tournaments yet, I think.
Yes.
Maybe.
More, maybe. Yes.
All right.
Yeah, I wanted to comment. Over the last 15 or 20 years, we've done a lot of studies on recreation needs. I know when there was land purchased out in the county by the city, I think there was a plan put together of what that park would look like in 2 or 3 different phases. I think we can probably adjust that to what our community needs are. We've done plenty of community surveys. It doesn't take rocket science to know what the community wants, because I think we all get phone calls on it. And we go out to the soccer field and the landfill, soccer fields and the landfill. I went out there one day and I couldn't believe the number of people that were out there. I bet there were probably 1,000 people out there. And I looked at license plates. They were from Missouri and Indiana, Tennessee, Kentucky, and they were from as far away as Louisville and Lexington and Kentucky. They were from all over. So I think it's going to be easy for us to decide what we need. We have to prioritize how we develop that. I also think we have plenty of space now to get started in. If we could redevelop Stuart Nelson Park and make that a quality, a higher quality facility. I know that's used a lot now, I think, for softball, mainly. I believe I'm correct on that.
Mostly adults.
But maybe that could be developed into baseball fields. I mean, it sounds nasty to talk about having athletic fields on old landfills, but a lot of communities do that. I think we've gotten through some state regulations now that I think there can be some improved development on there to put a new top on that to make it a better facility than what it is now. There was a lot of work done the last 4 years to improve those soccer fields, but I think a lot more can be done maybe to make that work. And again, the stigma of being on a landfill, I know, is not good, but a lot of communities do a lot of things on landfills, and I think that would work. I think we need to think outside the box. Sandra mentioned, Commissioner Wilson mentioned public-private partnerships. There's a law firm in Louisville that specializes in private, whatever I'm trying to say, the 3P, yeah, the 3P programs. And they're aware that there's been some athletic facilities. My grandson played traveling baseball, and he went down to one in Mississippi that was operated by a private company. There was a Hardee's in there and all kinds of restaurants that were part of that facility. And there was activities there all the time, from concerts to softball tournaments to baseball tournaments and soccer tournaments. And I think there was an aquatic facility in there, but it was a public-private partnership, and I think it really worked well. And I think we really need to explore that pretty strongly for what we're trying to do here, because we don't have the revenue source. We don't have $21 million like Elizabethtown had to put the facility they had in. And again, it's nice to put that in. Even if we had the $21 million, we'd have to figure out how to pay for its operation. And as the mayor mentioned, I think that's a big problem that Elizabethtown faces. I remember seeing some headlines and talking to some people in Elizabethtown about the cost of operating that. But I think we need to look at public-private partnerships to operate that, and there's companies around the country who do that. The one down in Mississippi, I think, somebody from Paducah talked to him. He said he'd be glad to come up. This has been 5 or 6 years ago. He said he'd be glad to come up and talk of how it works down there. But I think we have to think outside the box. We don't necessarily need to go out and buy new land and start over, because I think we've got some of the amenities we can use. We've got the former athletic complexes at the former 3 McCracken County high schools that may be available to be part of it. I know they're all not real close together, but when you have tournaments, you know, people are sometimes used to going to a community and they play at one location and drive 5 miles to another location for another ball game. So I really think it's something that it's been studied a lot. There's a lot of reports. Probably those file cabinets would probably be maybe 2 less file cabinets out there if they weren't full of recreation studies that were done over the years. The county's done some, the city's done some. I'm sure there's been a lot of private investors have done some. And it could be that maybe the city and the county don't have to pay to have certain amenities in there, because maybe a private operator would come in and be part of the partnership, maybe for an aquatic facility, for a tennis facility. I just think we really need to think outside the box, because we're not going to be able to come up with $20 million or $15 million to develop athletic facilities. But I think if we use what we've got and are innovative, Noble Park, when I first came to Paducah, Noble Park, the baseball field, they had the old Pony League and the Colt League and another league that was out there all the time. And those fields were full every night of the week and every afternoon out there practicing. I don't know if they are the way they used to be, but they used to really be full out there. So I think we have a lot of opportunities to think outside the box. I like the idea of maybe putting together a working group to analyze what you come up with in your study, to get all the studies that have been done previously and look at those, and then come up with a list of what's needed for the community and try to come up with priorities. We talk about 1,000 kids in the community play soccer every summer. There's probably that many that play baseball and softball. And I know somebody mentioned Commissioner Abraham mentioned they get in their car and they drive south to Mississippi. And when my grandson played, he played everywhere from Cincinnati to Kansas City to go on traveling baseball. And I think there was an attempt to have some visiting teams come in last year, and whether right or wrong, or the criticism was right or wrong, there was some issues that arose from that. So I just hope we can put together a group and come up with a plan that we can make together maybe in phases and have different think outside the box ways to finance them and pay for them, because I think recreation is becoming more of a amenity in every community. It's more of a necessity in every community, and I think necessity usually will attract some private investors to help with that if we can find a way. I've long thought that I agree with Commissioner Jones that we need to find a way to at least explore the sportsplex. That's a big facility. I know there's been some criticism it's too big, but we can find other ways to use that and make it usable. I think Commissioner Jones made the comment, if we let that become a warehouse, a year from now, we're going to have a full house of people coming in wanting to know why their daughter or granddaughter or son or grandson can't go play volleyball or indoor soccer and things like that. That facility, I know, has been on for sale for at least 6 or 7 years, and I think we don't need to take it off the table. We need to take a look at it, and it's not just rushing to make a purchase. We have to figure out how we would operate it. Whether or not there's a private operator that could come in and be part of a partnership with that, I don't know, but I just hope we can at least take a serious look at that. But it's more than that. It's softball. I know the media has made a big deal of the sportsplex, but it's softball, it's baseball, as has been mentioned here, it's soccer. There's a lot of interest in aquatics is really growing, and apparently pickleball is growing too. So we need to look at all these things. And again, I was just hoping to put together a working group and come up with a plan that's feasible and we can make it work.
A lot of dirt.
Mark, will the study address financing at all?
It'll give some avenues, but when it comes down to the financing, it'll give the general what they estimate costs to be. So it will then be up to the finance teams of the city and county to figure that out.
So that's something we can be working on right now.
Sure.
That's what Friends of the Park, I think, is trying to do, but they do need us to give them some direction as information comes in, so that, you can't sell a general concept, but when you start getting some ideas together, it's much easier to sell that and get people to put their money. This is a generous community. I think back to when the Four Rivers Center was being put together. It was very effective. Their fundraising, very. You'd go in and to a meeting and think you were going to give so much, and you came out and you just pledged for 5 or 10 years, and all of a sudden there you are. But I think it's a generous community. I mean, you think of all the things that have been done in the hospitals lately, as well as the arts area, tremendously generous. And I mean, sports hits almost everybody. And I think there's an opportunity for everybody to be a part. Even in, the $100 gift is just as important to that person and their involvement as somebody who can give a whole lot. And I was impressed at the last meeting I was at with Friends of the Park. Those people have some ideas, let me tell you. And those people are workhorses. They're gonna help us and get this done. But we can involve not just athletics, but people that are interested in the arts, people that are interested in gardening and the earth. If we, for instance, my dream personally is Noble Park, because of just where it's located. But you think about somebody designing a really wonderful piece of art as a centerpiece in that park, and off over here is the aquatic center, the plex, and over here are the fields, and then we've got garden clubs that have designed botanical gardens. I mean, there is no reason that we can't do this and do this state-of-the-art, do it really well. The thing I don't want to see us do is just kind of do it. And then in 10 years, we're back here still with substandard kind of facilities.
So, yeah, I do. First of all, I want to say that I help feed a dog twice a day, and I'm all about having a good quality dog park.
Backing up. Backing up.
I'm officially backing up for my comment.
Clarifying, that's right.
And I agree that one day...
What's your cell phone number?
and certainly one day the landfill may be a great facility for soccer fields, but it's limited right now because of the cap, and we haven't really started the timeline that it takes to be able to run water lines in the cap, which means that it's always going to be a struggle not having restrooms and concession stands at the landfill. So I'm kind of glad to hear that we're not. It doesn't sound like we're all still trying to figure out how to make that work, because maybe is not ready to work at that level for our community at this time. Before we move past the restaurant tax, and I know it's one of those things, every time we say Elizabethtown, we got to say restaurant tax, but I do think that it's important that our community understand, and this is the season. This is the season to raise the rhetoric on this issue, because this is not just some misstep that's happened in Frankfort. It is frankly unfair what has happened in Frankfort. I read, getting ready for this meeting, about Grayson, Kentucky. Not Grayson County, but Grayson, Kentucky. I think it's in Scott County. A town of 4,000 people are going to borrow $7 million, and they're going to fund it, and they're going to have a nicer park than we are, because they're going to be able to fund it through a restaurant tax that is unfairly allowed in that community to those residents and not allowed here. Now, you may say, Eddie, are you for the tax? Yes, I am for the restaurant tax for our community, because it makes sense. And it is unfair that we aren't allowed to charge it, and we need to raise the rhetoric this season while folks are running for office. And we need to raise the rhetoric again, and we need to send our legislatures to Frankfort with pre-filed bills, with examples of how to do it. And we have friends in this. We need to reach out to Henderson. We need to reach out to Hopkinsville and Madisonville, because they're in with us. We need to be a little more gangster on this issue and get this law changed.
There is talk among those cities. Madisonville does have a restaurant tax, 2%.
I guess they're under the
Yeah.
fourth or fifth.
Yeah. But there is a lot of talk among those communities and their chamber type organizations about it. It's really community development fund, and it's really not about that tax. It's about being fair to all communities, where they all have the same right. Each community can decide for themselves what works for them, if they want it or they don't. It's not saying you're for the tax necessarily. It's saying that your community should have the same right as every other community in the state of Kentucky.
And I guess that's maybe what I'm saying. I want us to be able to have the funding options so that we can fund this opportunity. Now, with that being said, whenever you're ready to talk about the Sportsplex, I'm ready to ask you some questions and put that more on the table.
If I may remind everybody also that, and there's a lot of folks that do believe that there's a whole lot of money that comes into the city from not just restaurants, but from hotels, from the transient room tax.
Well, and just from the sales tax. People think that we get some of the sales tax, and we do not.
We don't see a dime. We don't see a dime. And there's no restaurant tax, there's no sales tax, there's no transient room tax that comes to the city or the county, right? However that goes. And so by filling up those hotels, we're not able to help fund and build anything.
Yeah, right.
Just wanted to make sure.
That's a great way to put it.
Except for the jobs they provide. That's true.
Is that not a possibility, though?
Frankfort will have to tell you that.
I don't know.
We may have some disagreement on this side on that issue of whether at least a portion of the hotel tax could go to fund something recreational, provided that recreational facility did something like tourism, like bring in 1,200 volleyball teams over the last 21 months, which is what Sportsplex did.
That's a whole other debate on the...
That's a whole lot of debate, and so, okay.
Well, and you know what, that actually leads me to a question that I wanted to ask all of you, because I think it's really crucial that at this phase we be thinking about what our primary purpose is for sports fields and a recreation center. I think that is really crucial, because if we don't land on a primary purpose, I think that we're not going to see ourselves align towards the end goal. For example, I think there's only a few options here. So if the primary purpose of doing this development is for our community to experience it, then you might choose different locations for these things versus if our primary focus was just for tourism. So let's bring back Elizabethtown again. Elizabethtown built their facility in an industrial park because their primary purpose was for tourism. Whereas a different city you might choose, Hopkinsville, for example, I don't know this for sure, but if you see where they put their facility in the middle of their town, you could say that was so that their residents had access to it, whereas in Elizabethtown it's a little harder to get to. So I would really like to have that conversation with everyone if you'd be willing to, because I think landing on a primary purpose, it doesn't mean that we can't have a secondary purpose that we see benefit from, but I think choosing what the primary purpose is really, really important for us to move ahead. So I'd love to hear your thoughts on that, if anyone has any to share.
I think our primary purpose has to be to serve the community first, to serve the 1,000 residents of probably not just Paducah and McCracken County, but neighboring counties. And a close second to that would be the tourism that would come with it, because our local residents will participate in competitive sports that will attract other teams to come in and play our teams. So I think they're hand in hand. I think that number one, we have to do things to serve the community, because that's our obligation, and not to serve. No, I won't say that. Never mind. But I think our number one has to be to provide services for the community, and number two, that tourism will come with that, and that will hopefully. No, anyway, I think it has to be the.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
Let me say that, we heard talk about 1,000 kids that play soccer, and I was told it's more than an area of 1,200 kids that play soccer. I was really surprised by that. And you take the 1,200 kids that play soccer, they have at least one parent, maybe two. They have aunts, uncles, grandparents, and so it's a huge number of people that play soccer. And I don't know, and I intend to find out, along with everything else I'm learning in my long 3-month tenure in this office now, trying to learn a little bit about everything possible in a community. And one of those is that we talk about bang for the buck, and I don't know how much it costs. I'm going to find out how much it costs, what's involved in building a soccer field and building 10 soccer fields. I like to think big, and if necessary, whittle that down. I have talked to the mayor some back and forth about these things, and we've kind of been brainstorming a little about different areas and that sort of thing. I really like the idea of this Greenway Trail being the thread that would tie all this together. I think that's an incredible asset. If we could possibly put a rec center in the area of Noble Park, put soccer fields connected, whether it's, I've got real concerns about this landfill. I think maybe that would pan out in a few years, but we need soccer now. It's just an embarrassment, I think, that we have the soccer field out there. Not so much that it's on a landfill, but we can't even put bathrooms out there. You feel the urge, you got to go to what? McDonald's. You got to go to McDonald's or the Rural King, and good popcorn there, but so. You got this, you got the Greenway, you've got, I looked at that, what do they call it, Lover's Lane soccer complex, and what's that, Bowling Green. And they got their description of how many acres it is and everything. If you just close your eyes and think for a minute, what could our description be of our recreational complex? It starts downtown, the Greenway, it runs around through town, it runs out to not a landfill area, but whatever we come up with, a really nice dog park.
Pasture. Green dog pasture.
A pool, there's picnic pavilions out there, there's a couple of playgrounds for little kids while the other kids are playing soccer. Mama can take the kids or dad over to the playgrounds. Baseball, softball, soccer. There's a lot of land out there around Noble Park, and a lot of it's covered by big trees. Some of it covered by little scrub stuff on over toward Cable Road there and various things. But I really like the idea of tying it in altogether, and our description would be, I think, very attractive, and to the point of whether we're going to do it for the local community or we're going to do it for economic development to bring money in. I don't know. I think if you put the recreation center way outside of the city, it's going to eliminate or certainly hamper the local people's use of it. People may not want to travel out there that far. A lot of people won't have the ability to travel out there that far. Most people, hopefully, can travel to Noble Park area. If they can't, we'll work out a way that we can get them there. We can run some shuttles or do something if we need to do that, I think. That's one of the issues I have with the Plex Center, that it being that far out. But I just think if you put the rec center, the complex in town, in the Noble Park area, certainly local people are going to benefit from it, but I don't know why it would be not as much a tourist attraction as it would be out somewhere. I mean, certainly it'd be nice if tourists could come along, or travelers would say, that want to use the facility. The travelers come along, they can see it from I-24 and get off the exit and boom, they're right there. But not too much further to go into the Noble Park area. So I don't know that I buy in so much that building it in town is for locals, building it outside is more for, touring people or tournaments out-of-town folks. And, of course, the out-of-town folks, they spend a lot of money when they come in here. So we local people are benefiting from that, from the finances. And also, I've got this idea. I've been working with some folks about developing Clark's River. I think we need to develop, and I've talked to the mayor about that. She's either pacifying me or agreeing with me. Agreeing that Clark's River, there's an outfit called Jackson Purchase Foundation that's working, got some money to develop Clark's River, put some landings in, Reedland Ballpark, Sheehan Bridge Road, and then under the bridge at 62 there where there used to be a marina years ago, develop that into kayaking and canoeing. I'd like to see it tied into like a marathon kind of thing. Kayak down to inside of Owens Island, maybe on down to Broadway. You jump on your bike and you bike out to the, what was it, pasture? Or whatever, and you park your bike and you run back downtown or something. I just, I like to think out of the box, outside the box. Let's get creative, but I think we need to start by thinking big. I would hate to say we put 2 or 3 soccer fields over here in this one place and say, well, that's good enough, and then I think we can get on backside of the legislature and along with some of the other communities that don't have this, and let them explain to us, how is it fair? Good point. I mean, excellent. How are they going to say that it's fair that these communities can impose that tax and we can't? And what would be better than to have people that don't live here to help us pay for our recreational center, and they can come and use it too.
They're using it.
Hear, hear. Follow-ups?
The exact center of the county, and I know this well because I was crucified over it, so, is where McCracken County High School and the sportsplex is.
The exact center of the county.
City, county, the whole.
Not the city. Because we're not out there.
Not far from
So
there.
it's not the center of the city.
It's surrounded.
No, the center of McCracken County.
Center of McCracken
City of
County.
Paducah is in McCracken County.
That's
The
right.
center of McCracken County is right where McCracken County High School sits.
That's the center geographically. I wonder what the
Right.
center population-wise is.
It's heavy to that side, Gerald.
Close to the same area then.
This information, I'm not.
And I think, I think it's really great that we're talking this, and I do want to I make a point or try to several times, I don't know if there's the 10 people that are watching this on TV right now, and the 20 or so out here, this is how we have to operate in an open forum. We can't, the mayor and I can talk, and one or two of the commissioners can talk, but this open meetings law requires that we come out here, and people may be thinking, gosh, looks like they would have figured this out, or why are we having all this out in public? Why don't they do their homework and that sort of thing? Because we can't do our homework. We've got to come out here and make the sausage right here in front of everybody. And it can get messy, it can get kind of confusing, and we have to be able to express our thoughts, openly and honestly. We can't say just things like, we'd rather hide or whatever. And if we really love dogs like Eddie does, we can express that.
I do.
So, years ago, you all bought a lot of land out off Shinbridge Road.
Okay, wait, you all being, the city government who was sitting in these seats that are not us. The city government bought some land.
Is that still owned by the city? Or?
Well, you were here.
Yeah, I was.
He bought it, I sold it.
It is not. It is not.
Back, me and Mark were the lead negotiators on that deal, but we were trying to move forward with a recreational complex then, with acreage looking for soccer, baseball, and softball, particularly as the highest priority. And we had, I think it was 6 sites. We walked all 6 of them, and that was the best property. It was former County Commissioner Wayne Lindsay's farm. It was 163 acres, and most of it was flat. It's just beautiful land, border I-24. And so we bought it at a fair price. And we were going to try to develop it, but we had been told if we would develop over on that area, and that just happened to be the best parcel anyway of the 6, that a certain business person was going to donate $1 million for development, right? And that industry went a little bit south, and so that money never came.
That was 2007, 2008.
Right.
So we never had any financial support, and so then because it just sat there, future Commissioner Sandra sold it.
Well,
but the city didn't lose hardly anything on it, maybe a few $1,000s.
Exit 11 is a place that needs some growth, so that's really
Yeah.
It was a beautiful site, but it just wasn't going to work.
Beautiful land, beautiful land. We just didn't have the money, when we didn't get the support we were promised. So I don't know if it's still available or not. And
no, we auctioned it. It's sold and it's used as a working farm.
Is it? Okay.
And it was harder to get to. When you talk about transportation issues and all of that, especially if you're talking about for our own citizens to get there, it was remote as far as that, and not easy.
Well, we've got to decide, not decide tonight, but like the mayor says, we need to decide certain things. One of them is I feel strongly that if we could find the land around the existing facilities, Noble Park, Stuart Nelson, in that area, it would be a really strong move, I think, to do that. If we don't have enough, and I didn't really understand, Mark, what you said about the number of fields. I think you said it's what we land on, and I don't know. And I didn't mention I'm going to get together, and maybe some of them are listening. Commissioner Jones and I met with a couple of Paducah Tillman soccer coaches and learned a lot about soccer. I had a lot. I didn't even know what. I recognized the ball, but that's about it.
I'm a former Paducah Tillman soccer coach.
Are you then?
Yes.
Yeah, well, I need to talk to you maybe. But I didn't know what size a soccer field is, and for good reason. You don't know what size a soccer field is?
Lots of size.
Lots of sizes. Depends on who's kicking the ball. What the age of the player is. The smaller kids have a smaller field. Makes sense. But trying to find land, and since then, every time I go driving, I live out in the country just a little bit, go by a parcel of land, oh, look, soccer field, and is it flat? And there's a lot of land out in the county that could make probably 8, 10, maybe 12 soccer fields. But I'm going to meet with those coaches, the McCracken County coaches. There's a soccer outfit called Puma that I intend to meet with. I want to meet with these people that can tell us, I don't know, maybe there's somebody, maybe Mark, you do know, how many soccer fields is enough? And how much land do we need to do that? And I know they cross-divide the soccer fields.
Right.
We were down behind Jeton School. There's some more land down there behind the Jeton field that perhaps could be acquired and used. Lots of possibilities. It's just, do we want it to be out away from everything? Do we? You know, it's like sort of like in real estate, it's that location, 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 and so a lot of things to think about, and a lot of possibility.
Now, if I may, I'll clarify. If we go back to our park master plan from 2002, we had 10 baseball, softball fields designed into that originally. I think it was an overreach for Stuart Nelson Park, but that's what it was, and that's where they were going to go with that. Back then, there was a Parks and Recreation Community Center with an aquatic center and even an ice rink in a design in Noble Park. That was in the 2002. The soccer field was based typically 8, start out with 6, build to 8, and possibly 10 to 12 at that point. So to do a good tournament, 8 fields, 8 full fields, and that's a lot of property. But there's stuff that's already owned by the city, and we have some drawings for most, as Bill said, we've got a lot of drawings.
One of the things that struck me when I drove through Elizabethtown was that there wasn't as much synergy to the different fields as I thought there would be. I mean, it seemed like each field had its own concession stand, its own set of restrooms.
That's exactly
and
what
its
it
own
said.
parking lot.
That's why they host a softball tournament, completely different group of people. They can host this at the same time the soccer tournament and then a baseball tournament all at the same time with 3 different groups.
But I guess in applying that to our city, which gets circled by the river, February, I guess I'm not convinced that we have to put all of those things in the same spot.
No.
Are you?
No. They
I
don't
think it makes
all
it
have
more
to be.
cost effective, though.
It does from a maintenance standpoint, but you would need all of your baseball, softball fields close together, all of your soccer fields close together. So you're not running from park to park to park to go get things drug out and lined and everything else like that. That's where you lose your productivity.
Other than Exit 11, has there been any plan of a spot of ground that said, all right, this could have 12 soccer fields and the 8 to
I don't know that any of them had. Well, I'll take that back. Of the 6 properties we had, there were other properties that held that, because I think our base that we asked for was a minimum that could hold 10 of those, 10 soccer fields. And so that there are still a couple of those properties available. As we talked about the Commerce Park, there's an area there that we have laid out.
So the synergy, though, is really in the maintenance of it, not in the operation of it. You're still going to have multiple parking lots, multiple concession stands.
Just depends on it depends on the property and how it's designed. And we've got different levels of it, and we've got some pretty interesting designs.
Was the information age property big enough for both soccer and softball?
Depends on how much property you want to give from the development, from the economic development.
Yeah. And that was,
there's property out there, yes.
And I think that's important to know that that's not free.
It is not
free. It is not free
encumbered
property.
by a Kentucky Economic Development loan of about $1.6 million, and I think we got to pay at least $15,000 per acre to release that encumbrance.
That's the last I heard on it. Was somewhere in there.
It's a lot more than that. It's about 35 an acre.
Well, it's $15,000 for floodplain acreage, and I think you're right. It is $30,000 for the economic.
Well, let me ask a question. Would it be possible for you to gather some of these studies and these plans have been put together and share them with us so we can look at them? Because when you mentioned them, I remember when they came out in the 2002 study and all these others. Can you go back and?
It's actually on the city website still.
All of them?
No, the 2002 master plan is, and then I can gather some of these others, but and get them to you as working documents.
Was the 2002 master plan, is that the one that redeveloped Stuart Nelson? And I remember that. I don't remember what year it was, but
that was, that was 2002. We updated it in 2008 for the central part of Noble Park with the lake and the things we've done with that, with the wall.
Yeah, if you have any you can share with us, it'd be good.
That's right there. Yeah, anything else I can find, I'll get to y'all as a working document.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Well, at some point, I want to have the Sportsplex conversation with you, because I don't want to have you over Monday night to talk with us. And I hope it will.
I can see you Monday night. Doesn't matter.
But it strikes me, Hopkinsville just built 54,000 square feet, 3 basketball courts, 1 indoor soccer. It cost $5.6 million, which gives me if my math is right, that's $100 of construction, $100 per square foot of construction. That existing facility is 79,000 square feet. So if I'm using Hopkinsville numbers, to build it somewhere else would cost about $8 million. I guess. That's not what I do, but just using that simple math. Mm-hmm. The opportunity to buy it at significantly less, even looking at the list price, and I'm aware of articles where the list price was lower in the past. I guess why wouldn't we be interested in preserving that if we get it at the right price?
I don't think that's a question.
No, I don't think so.
Okay.
I think that's a commission question.
All right. So
yeah.
It's financial. That's a financial question to ask.
Yeah, I guess my response would be that if we're talking about a $15 million recreation center, we're just going to throw numbers out there, right? Like a $10 million baseball and softball field complex, a $10 million soccer complex. We're having these huge numbers that we're throwing out here. And then we also add on $5 million for a building that we want to save. I guess that's where I get stuck, because it's one more thing that costs that much more money for us to try to do something with, and doesn't meet all the needs of everything that we're trying to accomplish. Does that make sense? I get stuck on that. I'm open to the conversation for sure. I just don't know how we can prioritize that when we have all these other things we've just spent the last hour talking about,
Well, but I think it does fit in some of the things that we have been talking about. From what I've been told, there were nearly 250 million users in the last 2 years at the facility of city and county residents, and 1,200 volleyball teams have spent the night there more than one night in the last 2 years. I guess it seems like it fits the discussion. I certainly can appreciate, City Manager, why maybe I ask you a policy question, and let me try and reframe it a little differently. Aside from the money, is there opportunity in and around the Sportsplex where the Sportsplex could be an anchor of a facility out there that might meet our needs? And I realize it's not in the city limits, but it's pretty close. And a lot of the property around that property that is retail is in the city. And certainly the people that use it are city. And I guess I'm trying to figure out what potential for using that facility would be there, despite the fact that it's in the floodplain, how we can manage around that. Has that ever been evaluated?
I think we've looked at that property from a floodplain level before that building was even built.
That 40 acres or that whole area?
That 40 acres, including that whole area. And remember, right after it was built, like 2011, that the water was at the doorstep at that point. Now, they did elevate the building some, I do know that. But going back to that, the use of the building, now, depends on which hat you want me to wear right now. As the City of Paducah Parks and Recreation Director, I've got to think about a lot of people on how they would get out there if it were for us, just if it was going to be, say, we're going to use that and be primarily local user, that sort of thing. And for a lot of people, just in some of our youth sports, it's tough to get to Noble Park. Whether or not we've got bus transportation and whose parents going to let them get on the bus by themselves or things like that. It's just difficult. Jeff and I have talked about it from a concession stand standpoint at Noble Park, that the demand, while there's a lot of kids out there who need to be there, it's getting them there from that perspective. And that's some of the most difficult things. And we're working every day to try to stretch to get folks there, working with Oscar Cross. We're working all kinds of angles to try to get more kids in those programs, because we have some folks who, again, have been very generous and donated some money because they want to see the kids in the city limits get there to play.
I would assume the Elizabethtown model would have that same problem.
And they're
Elizabethtown.
Well, and again, it's the ones who can afford to get there.
I think we go back to what Mayor Hartlett said, or what is our objective? Is it a local thing? Or Elizabethtown, I don't think, had a local objective. They want travel ball teams from all over.
It is primarily
a
travel facility.
Yeah. So we
and geared that way. You can tell from all the photo ops from all the locations with the large baseballs and large soccer balls that their teams have pictures. They actually have podiums for championship photos.
Yeah.
I think when Elizabethtown decided that they were going to fund something for growth in their community for tourism or whatever, they looked at a couple of different things. There was the ballpark, and that, I call it the Disney World of ballparks, or they were also looking, I believe, at a large convention center, and they chose to go with the ballparks at that time, and that's what they would fund with that money. And I think it is primarily to bring in out teams. I mean, they host tournaments from all over the country for teams.
Their tournaments were run with a group out of Baltimore, at least originally.
I guess that conversation was had when the city bought the Exit 11 property, and must have weighed on the side of it being okay for it to be. I don't know how far out that property is.
It's pretty far, I guess.
That was right in the curve on Sheehan Bridge, right by the river.
I know
yeah.
the property.
Yeah.
I mean, comparing that distance from, say, center downtown out there.
We looked at it from
the flex.
Yeah, we looked at it from the perspective of, and one of the questions was, how long does it take to get to the hospital?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And from the other side of the mall and Exit 11, they were about the same, because you were fighting the traffic coming in from the mall or anything else like that, depending on the time of the day, where you were running straight in off the interstate.
Do you think you could recall the primary objective of that?
The primary objective was to be a large tournament facility. Now, we were looking also at, even in some of the designs, we had a spot holder for a natatorium. We had spot holder for tennis. I mean, those types of things, for not only that, but the folks who locally could play and get there. But again, it would take some, and we were hoping that the county would join in at that time, and it didn't, too.
So thank you for being here tonight.
But thank you for that.
I said, so thank you for being here tonight. I think
it's a big step.
It's a big step for us to be able to have this joint conversation. And as you said, it's kind of like making sausage in public to be able to talk about it. But it is a great step forward.
And there's other ground. I mean, there's lots of ground out around in the
There is.
And I mean, if it weren't to be located in the central area like the Noble Park and Greenway and all that, there's areas out that way around Exit 11 that and the flood wall runs right down through there, right out John Purrier
We've discussed that as an extension of the Greenway.
Yeah, it wouldn't be difficult at all to run that Greenway trail on out to exit 11 for people like me that are really strong runners.
Mark, again, I go back to this study because I know we're spending a lot of money on this study. I want to get our money's worth. Will they not look at things like current facilities like the Plex?
Oh.
So they'll be doing all that.
There's a lot of that that's going to be included.
Okay, because that just, we need expert evaluation of that facility. Is it even, what's the condition of it? Would it have multiple uses? Because it seems like it's big for what it is in terms of doesn't address some of our other priorities like a pool, like ball fields. So that's good.
When the study will show us who will get the most use out of swimming, baseball, soccer. I mean, if we use a local thing, I really think that's what we need to look at, what the most use for the people of Paducah and McCracken County will get. If it's swimming, then that's the number one priority. If it's
just for
soccer, baseball, whatever, we need to rate it and build to that.
Just for an example of that, and a few of us went on a trip up to, Jim took us to his old hometown in Effingham, and they built a community recreation center that had swimming pool and had a double gymnasium, had walking track, had fitness facilities and that sort of thing. And yes, they did their competition with and against the local fitness groups. Some of those fitness groups stayed in business, some didn't. Some went in with them. The other part of that was they have tournaments there. But because their membership to that facility is so strong, and they have all levels from all income brackets, they have income-based admission and memberships. But they had weekend tournaments, basketball tournaments, volleyball tournaments, and probably pickleball tournaments, Bill, because it looked like it was getting pretty big there too. But they couldn't have it every weekend, which is okay when you're taking care of your local first. So, I mean, and that same type of thing you can do on athletic fields. They don't have to be exclusive one way or another, but you've got to make them where they're accessible both ways. And so if you're talking about that from soccer fields to baseball fields, and if there's something we need to do internally create something from a Pat's ride for evening athletics at a remote site, then we mean to do something like that to help the community or something like that. There's other ways to skin that cat. And we have other athletic fields here in town or something like that, that if a primary's out there, that, hey, maybe those teams come in, and they do, like over at Brooks Stadium, the park around Brooks Stadium, they come and play. Had the soccer coach from Tillman call me the other day. They're coming out and playing this weekend at Shepherd Field. They needed a field to play on, said, sure, come on. So there's other ways to skin that cat. But I think we're making the right you all are making the right step by discussing this and getting it out and getting in front of it.
I want to make sure I take the opportunity to plug an idea for the recreation center that I think I hope we get to chew on eventually. And it's this concept about whether or not we include fitness equipment into the recreation center. And we did learn from Jim and the folks at Effingham that when they started talking about the recreation center, there was a lot of pushback from the local fitness community. Everyone knows my husband owns a gym. So I was very interested in this conversation. In Effingham, there were fewer fitness centers, I think so, in Effingham than there are in Paducah, fewer well-established ones. And so I would want to be very thoughtful about that, especially because I think we have a lot of fitness centers in the city. And one of the thoughts that I really like is getting a little creative with the offerings in our fitness center, or our recreation center. So, for example, being able to do something like rock climbing. With Southern Illinois so close, there are a lot of people who do bouldering and rock climbing in Southern Illinois. We have access to the outdoor options. We also, I've spent some time in Climb Nashville. In Nashville, of course, we couldn't have a facility that large, but to be able to offer something a little bit more, out of the box, I think could be interesting. And then thinking about this whole kind of, kayaking, canoeing piece of it, if we were able to locate our recreation center somewhere closer to the river, then we could consider maybe doing rentals or something like that. Maybe we partner with Hoopers or we partner with someone to be able to offer this kind of one-stop shop. I was in Chattanooga recently, and they have an outdoor recreation center like that, where they it's an indoor facility with basketball courts, volleyball courts, those kinds of things. But then you can rent kayaks and canoes and jump into the river and go for it. So I think there's a lot of options, and I'm glad that we're starting this conversation. I hope that those of you that were here tonight will start those conversations again with us after tonight. Sorry we didn't have public comment tonight, but next time if we get another joint meeting together, we'll make sure we put that on the agenda so we can hear from the community as well. There'll be a lot of public opportunities coming up when we roll out some of those findings from the surveys and the master plan. So I'm sounding like I'm wrapping up. Is it okay if I do so, or does anyone have anything else they want to make sure?
I want to make sure we
Okay.
have public comment on any other meetings we have about this.
Great.
I want to hear, there's people out here I want to hear from.
Excellent. Yep. We will make sure to do that.
I would
From
be
now
in-
on, you making a note for that, please, City Clerk? Thank you.
I think it's probably been mentioned, but I would like to see some information on if we're going to, and we may not do that. They're both important, as Commissioner Bartleman said. We satisfy local people. That's first, But we also we've got to look at the tourism industry. That's a multi-million-dollar industry, and local people will participate in that too, as Commissioner mentioned. But I would like to look at, if we're going to do that, let's just pretend we're going to go for an angle of having some tournaments to take advantage of those tourism dollars. Sure. How much acreage do we need for softball, for baseball, for soccer? Because those are the three big land users that we need acreage for. I would like to know exactly what are we looking at and how much total acreage do we need, and then we can look at, all right, what is available? Does that match up? Does any of them meet our requirements, or what all meets our requirements? And then we can start going out and looking at them and saying, do we like this, do we like that, or narrow it down to the best option. And then what, of course, can we afford?
That's putting me on the spot. Can I come back and bring you that information?
Yeah, I wouldn't expect you to have that tonight.
I was going to try to pull that one out of my hat. But
no, that's going to take some time.
Work
yeah,
through that, please.
Yeah, that'll take some time to decide. You have to look at a lot of numbers and look at other communities and what are they doing? How many are they? What's realistic for us?
Okay, we can do that.
Okay, thanks.
Oh, I wanted to comment on the tourism angle. I think it's important that we find a way to help that. But I think the tourism industry has to participate in the funding of this, whether it's by sharing the hotel motel tax. We always hear the argument that they're limited to what they can spend the money for. And tourism is very important, but the tourism industry has to help us fund this, because I'm speaking in generalities, but when we have people come into the community and they stay at a hotel that's owned by a out-of-town corporation, a lot of that money doesn't stay in the community. And I know that's a touchy subject, and that just speaks in generalities, because they provide jobs for people who work in the hotels and the restaurants. But we have to find a way for the tourism industry to help fund this. If they're going to get some benefit out of it, and if they're going to get the majority of the benefit out of it, I think we have to find a way for them to share in the funding of it. And that may be by finding a way that they can share the hotel tax in some way. I think it brings in, for the Visitors Bureau, about $1.2 to $1.3 million a year. And I know they spend that to promote the tourism industry, but there has to be some investment in the community, and some of those funds have to go to help the community, I think. But that's a debate for another meeting, I'm sure.
I don't know that we'll.
But it is a
Another
debate
venue.
that we need to have.
It is. It needs to be had, and it's something I've been concerned about for a long time. And you know, that $1.2 million, where does that go? Is it? A lot of it's not invested in the community. It's invested in larger cities to advertise our community. And you know, how many people see an ad on TV in Chicago and come to Paducah? I'm sure there's some. And I think once they get here, they see a lot of things. I always tell the story that I was at a convention in Cleveland, Ohio, and ran into a couple that was from New England, and I wanted to know where I was from, and I said Kentucky, and they wanted to know where. I told them Paducah, Kentucky. They said, yeah, we've been to Paducah. They said, we came down to Paducah to go to Stephen Curtis Chapman's father's music studio, because they were big Stephen Curtis Chapman fans. And I mean, it's a nice studio, and he does good work there. But once they got down here, they wound up spending a week in the community. They remembered the flood wall. They traveled the River Road. They talked about going to the World War II Museum in Wycliffe. And once they got here, I think it benefited the community. But again, and I think it's a big asset for us, but we have to find a way for those tourism dollars to be shared in providing the amenities that they're benefiting from.
I've written a letter to the Attorney General to get a AG opinion. Actually, Eddie wrote the letter and I signed it.
Throw me under the bus.
I did. And so we'll perhaps get an answer to that, something with a little bit of legal force behind it in case it should be needed. And I agree with what you're saying about that.
Well, I think it's important that we as the elected officials have some input as to how that hotel tax is spent. Some of it is designated by statute, but I think there is some room for, if we all agree, you guys agree and we agree, and the individuals that we put on the board agree, then we could use that, provided the money is reasonably dedicated to generate tourism, like 1,200 volleyball teams coming.
Well, it doesn't sound like you need that money for that. It already happened.
Well, I'm just afraid it's not going to happen again if we don't preserve the building.
Fair enough.
All right.
You guys got anything else?
Future dates.
Future, yeah.
You ready to move on? Future dates? All right.
May I say one thing,
Oh,
though,
please.
if I may? We're not going to do anything with the dog park tonight.
Thank you. All right. So
It's a good thing you're sitting down, because then that opens a whole other debate. So,
Judge Klein,
I thought the skinning the cat was a good metaphor.
I just say it twice. Jeez. Judge Clymer had mentioned that perhaps we go to maybe an every other month for now. So maybe we go to June for our next joint meeting. And if we have something come up between now and then, we can always call something. But we can plan on June. Is that okay with everyone?
18th.
Every other month or so?
June 18th.
let me ask you a question. What's the timetable for rolling out the final report on that you're doing?
10 months. It was a 10
Oh, okay. We don't have to worry about that this summer then.
There will be action. There will be movement, but not
Okay.
full report.
Thank you for asking that, because I do want to say, I got to say this, that when we started the master planning process with the brand setter and the local consultants as well, we, as a body, and I definitely said that we don't need to wait for 10 months to be done before we start preparing to do something. So I just want to make sure that we're all understanding that this is a parallel path, and we might jump the gun in front of the master plan. That I firmly believe this needs to be a parallel path. So we've been talking about financing internally, about what our bonding capacity is, where are we going to get the real dollars from to do these kinds of things. I'm hoping that you guys are having the same conversations. So I just want to make sure that we're all in, and the public especially understands that we're not going to wait for month 10 to start getting serious about this. We're going to do it now and let the master plan inform us as we go along. So I just want to make sure that we're all on the same page with that.
Gerald will be walking property very soon.
That's great.
I'd also like to
walk in
challenge
boots
you and the
ready.
judge to come up with a plan to continue the discussion of recreation, so that we don't wait 10 months to have this again. I mean, we all get excited, we get some momentum going, then we seem to wait. So you mentioned maybe a working group of some kind, or work with the other group that's working, and we just need to make sure this discussion continues and doesn't sit dormant for 3 or 4 months.
Absolutely. So I will be joining Judge Clymer in the soccer meeting for sure. And then Commissioner McElroy's been a part of the Friends of the Parks meeting and raising that side. So has Commissioner Jones. I think that we have some good people in the right places now to keep that going. We could also put an update on the agenda for our joint meetings, just so we could have 20 minutes or so to make sure that we're updating each other on what's happening. That could be a way to do that, if everyone's open to that.
And
Yep, okay.
we want Mark to take his time because he's got a lot of other things to do. But as soon as he completes that study, I'd like to hear from him right away so we could go ahead and start exploring.
So do we have a topic for the next joint meeting? Is there something that, I guess we've got 2 months that would.
We've still got this 911 thing.
911 is a big issue that we've got to resolve.
Yeah, you want to bring it back up then?
Yeah, I was going to recommend we bring both of these back up so we can talk about them again.
Great.
About 2 more months to make progress on each of those.
Excellent. So 911 and Parks and Rec.
And public comment.
Sounds good. And add public comment. We got that.
I was wondering too, in 2 months when we meet again, hopefully we have an economic development director.
Oh.
And I was wondering if that could be on the agenda to kind of talk about the vision of whoever that person is. And I don't know if that would be the right timing for that or the right format for that. But again, that's another of our all these are our priorities: 911, recreation, economic development. They all work hand in hand, and we just need to make sure we continue conversation on those. So again, I don't know if 2 months from now that's a timing that's right or not. I don't know.
So what about if we just keep an open mind, if you don't mind, Lindsay, making a note of that? And as we get closer to it, if there is a new ED director, if there is that kind of information, we'll try to add that to the agenda.
Let me also, we discussed the need to deal with the legislature and change some laws. I know that the chamber always has priorities. And
It's on there.
I was just wondering if the city and the county, if we were to treat all cities equal. I thought when the legislature did away with the class cities that they would do away with all the laws pertaining to class cities, but they didn't do that. I mean, I think that was a mistake, that they should have done that all at one time. But anyway, I wonder if we as a political body, 2 political bodies, promote that as a high priority along with the chamber, but we make that a high priority, and we have some meetings where we bring our legislative delegation in and we really point out the importance of those changes. I mean, it can be on the list if you go up there with 10 things in Frankfurt with the chamber, but we need maybe one thing that the city and the county are working hard on as part of what the chamber does to really push.
I think that would be a big help to have that. I mean, we did work with the League of Cities this time and some of the other communities, Owensboro and Hopkinsville, I think in particular. We worked a lot with them as a city and as the chamber as well. But I think all of it brings a lot more strength.
I think what we need to do is
unity.
bring our legislative delegation in where they're sitting on the front row and they hear that. We've got candidates for governor. Then maybe we can have some meetings with some of those people, the lieutenant governor, and just point out the importance and try to get commitments on that. Again, the things the chamber does are important, but when you go up there and you've got 15 things on the agenda, maybe some of them are predictable of what a chamber of commerce is going to be for. But I think as a political body, I think we need to represent our citizens and communicate with our legislators maybe a little bit more directly as the political body. So maybe at some point we can add that on there.
I'm working on an essay that you may or may not want to adopt as your own. I'll share it later in the week.
Great. Thank you. Looking forward to reading that. All right. June 18th is the proposed date for now. Does that work for everyone?
What time we're at?
5:30.
Y'all want to keep meeting over here?
Or do you want to go to your place?
I think we need to stay over here. I don't know, we got really room for everybody at our place, do we, Judge?
No, we can't skin that cat, I don't think.
I'm going home to walk my dogs.
Just take them to the dog park.
You do have.
I may not be here the 18th. I got to be in Chattanooga, but as of right now. But y'all be fine without me.
We'll keep it on there, and if anything changes, we can discuss it. All right. Anything else? No?
Motion
All
to
right.
adjourn.
We're not going, we're just doing them, we're just going 2 months ahead.
Yep. Is that okay with you for now? Okay. All right. Well, from the city commission
Motion to
meeting,
adjourn.
I make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Meeting adjourned.
Y'all want to hang out or you ready to go?
I want to hear Eddie talk more about the fourth place.
Sounds like a motion and a second. All right, we're adjourned.